This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome to Breaking Banks Europe at SIBOS. We are in Amsterdam. This is the second time over this year. I'm here with Tom Zschach, who actually joined Swift a little bit more than 3 years ago, so I just had the pleasure to meet him for the first time. Tom, welcome to Breaking Banks Europe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about SIBOS and all the exciting things that are happening at Swift now.
So why don't we start a little bit by, what's your role, what's your a previous background, right. And also let's share how good it feels, to be back, in real life.
Absolutely, yeah. So, my role officially is the Chief Innovation Officer for Swift. I look after some other kind of related functions in terms of strategic partnerships and the way we introduce technology into the company, which fits nicely in what we're trying to do with things like emerging technology as a part of the innovation agenda. And I agree, it's great to be back. The SIBOS being the flagship industry program. I think there's more people than we could expect here. The enthusiasm and just getting to see people after a couple of years. And really, part of it is kind of coming out of the pandemic, but also it's just a really exciting time. And there's so many really interesting things that are happening, and a lot of those are really positive, and a lot of those are things you kind of need to prepare for or react to. So, it's a super dynamic time and a great time for the payments industry, that's for sure.
So I know that one of the topics that is particularly close to your heart, it is something that is literally frontiers, for Swift as an infrastructure. Yeah. We are talking about digital assets, CDBCs, currencies. So. And without being too technically into that, let's talk a little bit. What's the opportunity, for Swift as a cooperative to bring together the dialogue around of this new infrastructure with great potential?
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond the dialogue as well, because I think our position, which I'll jump into here, is a great one. And again, I think the timing, kind of the stars are aligned and it couldn't be better. So under Javier's leadership and the strategy that we're executing now, which is really kind of anchored on instant and frictionless payments and instant and frictionless transactions globally. And there's a big migration that's going on in terms of standardizing payment messages. We're in the process of launching a completely new state-of-the-art digital platform that allows us to really go ahead and kind of co-create with the industry. So when you kind of think about the timing of the execution of our strategy, a new platform coming online, and then all the kind of drivers that are out there with new forms of money, including central bank digital currencies, all of the interest that we see and the potential for things like tokenization of assets. Again, I think we're really well positioned. So what we did is we were looking for ways to kind of leverage what we are and what people expect and benefit from being members of the SWIFT network. And what we've done is we proposed a solution that really, I think, will allow the issuers of those assets, these new assets, and I would say these are regulated assets or assets that will be regulated. That's really what our priority is. But it really allows, by leveraging the SWIFT network and kind of bringing the community together on certain topics, really the ability to kind of fully realize the potential benefits of these new assets. That's probably the best way to think about it. So in the case of CBDCs, it was a central bank digital currency, and it really, it's a new form of money. Right, is what it is. It's compared to fiat. It's the same thing as fiat, but it's a new form of money. And what we've done is we've proposed a solution for that, which I think is fairly bold for Swift. Instead of kind of sitting back and waiting for things to happen or kind of commenting on things that are happening out there. And We've done that because we see from the central banks, for example, different technology solutions, different approaches, different policy objectives, right? A lot of those are really domestic cases to start. And so we looked at the CBDCs and we said, look, let's figure out some way. We're technology agnostic. We're not advocating the issuance of any digital asset. That's not our role. That's not what we do. But what we're saying is, because this is interesting to central banks, 9 out of 10 central banks are doing some sort of work on CBDCs now. And it's obviously interesting to how that might change how a commercial bank works. There's a lot of interest to figure out what does that mean and what's the right way to do it. So we've proposed a solution. We think this is anchoring the solution on interoperability between the new networks that we expect a central bank to, but don't know how they'll do that. A central bank will create a new network, and we can provide the interoperability between that new network and that asset and the existing payments infrastructure. And we think that's really powerful. So if you're in a central bank, that interoperability allows you to realize the full potential of that new asset, especially when you go cross-border. And also it gives a way to kind of drive adoption for them as well, and I think it's this is why we've got so much interest on this solution.
I think it's incredible, and I'm discovering this initiative by talking to you right now. So
yeah.
This reaction is like purely the enthusiasm is really natural. I think there are. SWIFT is uniquely positioned, to by the interaction, for the past 40 years with central bank, a little bit more actually, there is no one else who can enhance, the orchestration, of these kinds of initiatives between the different central banks. And now another question that sort of was triggered about what you were just saying. I think that this is also a great opportunity for a greater financial inclusion. These type of initiatives, don't you think, are actually even more important for emerging markets?
Oh yeah, we think the basic pillars for a well-functioning financial ecosystem is really being inclusive and really being connected, right, through interoperability. So yeah, that drives our thinking, because the alternative is, if you are to issue a new asset, whether that's a new form of the currency or a tokenized version of a regulated asset, for example, if you don't think about cross-border and you don't build in the interoperability, then you start to build digital islands. And then that leads to fragmentation, and that leads to, as you say, less availability and less inclusion. So on one hand, we have this fantastic opportunity for the way that we make payments or settle transactions or even make investments, right? And when you kind of look at it on a broader scale. And if we don't do this right, the other side opportunity we have is a dark one, right? And it leads to fragmentation. It might exclude people, companies, businesses, and nobody wants that, right? For a healthy financial ecosystem, we are, and you say we're in a great position. 11,000 institutions, 200 countries, connected to billions of accounts, and the trust. So I think it's not just the orchestration piece, it's actually also bringing the community together to co-create and figure out how these things should be done. Because there's lots of ideas on how to do it, but nobody has the recipe yet. But we don't need to have that. That's the innovation process is anchored on trust, anchored on interoperability, and giving everybody the opportunity to come together to figure out exactly how should that work so you can actually meet the goals.
One last question, super quick. You talked about this infrastructure to be open for third parties to collaborate, right? And I think it's basically the only possible way, because it's very complicated to sort of manage end-to-end all the technology. So this is like an invitation for third party to collaborate as well, right, in this infrastructure?
Yeah, third party, and we could use that term very, very broadly, right? So we do have a path for to bring other people onto the platform, kind of non-members on the platform, to make those services available in kind of a broader ecosystem. For Swift is one thing that we're kind of starting to go down the line on. But when you think about even something like a fintech, and sometimes people like to just focus on the competition, and that's true, right? And we've seen there are situations where people will compete with the corresponding banking business model, and therefore Swift, right? And we've never been the only game in town, and we never will be. But I think that the part that people miss, and we see a lot more, especially in the last couple of years, is that fintechs, for example, are also the one that want to collaborate with us and our banks and financial institutions, right? And they're also customers. A lot of time. So people like to focus on the competition. Of course, that happens sometime. We expect that, and that's not going to change. But in more cases now, they're collaborators and they're also clients. And so again, it goes back to kind of the inclusive approach that we take, because those are really the pillars of a healthy financial ecosystem, and that's really what Swift enables for the world.
Tom, I know that you have another appointment soon, and SIBOS is beyond busy for you. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. Welcome once again, and have a great SIBOS ahead.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
And it's a wrap.
The FTS Group builds innovation ecosystems. We engage incumbents, investors, entrepreneurs, technology partners, and regulators to build trusted and connected fintech tribes around the world. We firmly believe that innovation in financial services will truly improve people's lives. Learn more on ftsgroup.eu.
Hey guys, welcome back to live Breaking Banks Europe at SIBOS. I'm here in the second part of the show with Richard Neve. You and I, go back a long time, back almost at the InnoTribe times. He is a managing partner and at Cognito Media, who was, by the way, also the media partner of InnoTribe back then. I believe we were one of the, I want to say, most prestigious customer. Let me put some gold medal here on my chest. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Matteo. Yeah.
So, you and I, we were discussing about, some of the ingredients, for the recipe of this conversation, and I got fascinated by you talking about the difference of PR and sales, and the fact that a lot of people misjudge the fact that PR should be a vector for sales, and they consider it simply as a cost. I know it's a topic you're very passionate about.
Yeah, exactly, and that's because there's a disconnect between how sales is perceived versus marketing and PR. Because they don't align the KPIs, they don't align the objectives. And that's where then often the PR, marketing, social media, sponsoring side is seen as a cost with no tangible added value for the company. And people emphasize sales because it's obviously revenue building.
Of course.
But if you look at successful companies, they create a layer of white noise by marketing, advertising, PR. They're very visible, they're out there. Nobody can buy something with you if you don't have stuff in the window, shop window. But they align the marketing and PR efforts when it comes to objectives and KPIs with sales. So it's not marketing objectives, sales objectives, but the same objectives. Marketing generates the visibility and the leads and, let's say, the social awareness, reputation, reliability, and then it's sales who actually can nurture those, let's say, clients, prospects. And it's very intriguing to see that also from many larger companies, the PR and marketing people don't report to the same people that salespeople do. They should.
True.
So a successful company, also small fintechs, big corporate, should way more align this. There are two factors to make this happen. One, salespeople need to understand that without noise, no sales. And more important, the marketing and PR people need to talk Excel. They talk PowerPoint, amazing pictures, big words, but the CFO doesn't read PowerPoint, he reads Excel.
Absolutely.
So it's a language question in the corporate environment.
What is the specificity of the fintech space? And actually, I want to enrich this theme or this question with there is the classic PR, I want to say, and then there is the digital PR adapted to a specific audience. I'm thinking,
Absolutely.
banks want to talk to millennials, or like you wanna get influencers, in the mix. You wanna take people who are particularly like ambassadors. How creative versus classic you need to be in the fintech space?
Well, you need to be more innovative than ever before, because media, classic media, Matteo, is under pressure. There are less and less trade magazines and trade journals around, so let's say as a channel to reach an audience, classic media is less around. So every company needs to understand, basically, they're publishers themselves, and either they develop channels, newsletter, LinkedIn groups, Telegram groups, they develop channels themselves, or partner with smart operations like yourselves, or other, let's say, content providers who will be able to come up with creative ideas, will be able to come up with platforms that capture an audience, and will offer a company, let's say, the stage to get up on and talk about their messaging. So that stage that normally media is less there. So either you build the stage yourself, or you partner with people that have a stage.
Actually, this is a great segue to my next question, which is how big a fintech has to be to play in the PR and media space?
That's the funny thing. That's what the digital world now, that's what internet does. It's the big equalizer. You don't have to be big. As a matter of fact, a smaller fintech or a smaller, let's say, company that offers innovative financial services can outsmart big banks, big institutions, because they're way more agile, they have way less risk and control. So actually it is, for a scale-up in fintech, easier to be dominating in the media space than for FIS or one of the other larger players.
And how adaptable is the budget? So, it's because I'm talking to our audience, our audience, they might have never, bought a PR service, right? Yeah. And
well,
how does it work? How is that by drawers, is by verticals, is by reach? What are the KPIs?
It depends a little bit. Well, for one thing, the good news is it's always cheaper than sponsoring Formula One.
Yeah.
But there is, of course, like, I would say, some sort of minimum invest to get the ball rolling. That should not be expensive. I mean, a smart idea could be already implemented for a few thousand euros.
Okay.
But there is some sort of, let's say, call it startup cost. You have to get the ball rolling. Then develop material, create content, do press releases. There's another layer of costs, hours. And then to amplify your, let's say, the content that you create and you use as PR.
This is where you buy space, basically.
That's why you buy space. And that is obviously, that budget should be linked to your business case, that budget should be linked to your strategy, to your runway. You need, as an agency, we always have like a constructive conversation with our client, looking at their actual business case and say, okay, if you want to be here in 2 years' time, then this is sort of your marketing spend, and it's always linked to revenue and EBITDA.
So
this is talking Excel, by the way,
of
instead
course,
of
of course. I noticed that. So you were talking about like two type of approach, in terms of how do you manage a PR relationship with a client? The first approach is you speak with the client, you understand your need, you understand the needs, then you understand what the budget is, and then you implement. Okay, that's the classic pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there another more innovative partner where you start with something that does not exist and then you go and find the budget for it?
Exactly, and I think that's the way I prefer, because let's face it, what we do, you, me, our teams, is capture an audience with amazing content.
Absolutely.
And then, if you have a captive audience, there's always someone who who wants to use you as, let's say, a catalyst, a
vehicle, or
a channel to reach that audience. So yes, the classic model is there is the need at the client first, and they give you an assignment. But I think that the future will be that agencies like ours will more and more think and work like a publisher. You come up with a suitable content audience combination, and then once that is established, could be an event, could be a podcast, could be a television show, could be a magazine. That's another discussion. And then you'll be very beneficial to small and larger companies who want to be part of that conversation that you have with that audience.
Let's maybe finish up with I want to get your views on take a big event like SIBOS, okay, or Money 2020, or Web Summit, or these huge conferences. What, in your opinion, is the best combination between I want to say exposure, exhibition floor, like the interaction with the clients. So I want to say the more interactive part, and the pure content. So when the part where the conference delivers messages, calls experts, because without making names, but I can see that some events are like stronger on the interaction part, and maybe the content part is less engaging. Okay. SIBOS is probably one of the events that has both, that both are very well sort of invested in. But also SIBOS is not a commercial exercise, so
No.
It's but this dichotomy is always interesting, don't you think?
Absolutely. And the thing is that an event, you name the big ones like Web Summit or the Next Web or Money 2020, fine enough, from my perspective, the event itself is not the ROI generator. It's the campaign before and after. So a company that's looking to make impact by joining an event like SIBOS should see that as like a catalyst, an excuse to actually have like a campaign ramping up towards SIBOS, reaching out to clients, reaching out to prospects, putting something on the agenda. Eyeballs will be focused on your message because this event is coming up in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 1 week, anticipating. And then obviously you meet a lot of people during the event, and then how can I re-message, repack that information in 3 to 6 weeks after the event? So it's actually a 12-week campaign where the event is in the middle. And I see a lot of companies very much focused on the tactical implementation. Oh, we need a booth, we need a speaker. And that's important, but they insufficiently understand that the actual ROI is made before and after the event by actually bringing that narrative towards the audiences, towards their clients, towards their, let's say, stakeholders. And then it doesn't really matter if the event itself, you use the event as a backdrop.
Guys, I think that was pretty interesting to get some insights from someone who knows this space super well. Richard, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For being with us. And guys, stay tuned. More content from live from SIBOS. That's Breaking Banks Europe. It's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.